Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rowingchat 2021 Olympic Review. It's now Thursday, the 29th of July, and we've just had the second day's finals racing at the Tokyo Regatta. To review what happened today and what might be happening tomorrow, I'm delighted to welcome as my special guest, Mahe Drysdale. Mahe, welcome.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Excellent. Well, I can't think of anyone better that I'm going to enjoy talking about special wins that happened today, particularly, obviously, the New Zealand cruise.
Yeah, well, it was a pretty exciting day. It's actually the last 2 days have been pretty exciting with, a lot of action, and you can't sort of take any position for granted until they cross the finish line, which I guess is, I guess we always talk about it. Go to the line and don't expect anything, but actually being out there and watching it, it's been an interesting experience, I guess, for me, being the first one to watch from the couch, and I've certainly got a little bit nervous. The heart rate's gone up at times, so it's great to see such tight racing.
Right, let's run through the runners and riders. So kicking off, the first race that I really enjoyed watching this morning was the lightweight women's double scull. We had such a tight finish in this race.
Yeah, well, what do you say? It's one of those races that if you win it, you would say that was an awesome race, and if you're in the thick of it, knowing that you could be the crew that missed out on a medal, it's a horrible place to be. And it was just you had all the crews basically, those four crews across the course just tussing it out, and it was interesting, I guess. If you watched the semis yesterday, I wasn't quite sure, about the Dutch, for example. I was like, are they having a bad day, or are they holding something back? And I think they were holding something back because they, really tried to take that race in that second K today. They just about did it, and I think they were starting to struggle. You could see the bellwoman just starting to have a look around for the line. Where's the line? Where's the line? And she just had a couple of poor strokes, and that was enough to let the Italians through. And I think that's just heartbreaking. You have to feel for the Dutch, but you saw that elation on the Italians' face. I think the first medal the Italian women have won, gold medal. It's it's pretty spectacular, and you have to feel for the Brits as well.
They've had a clutch of fourth places, haven't they, this regatta?
Yeah. Well, they won obviously yesterday. Got a world best time, and then to miss out, what was it? I think 100th of a second or something like that, which yes, is pretty hard to take.
Yeah, it's grim and wonderful in equal measure. But for us spectators, I have to say, I, like you, I rewound the television so that I could see what actually happened to the Dutch, because it was exactly as you said. She looked around, probably shouldn't have done. It's just so hard.
Yeah, I think when you're in front, and you're in such a tight race, you just want the line to come, and obviously it didn't quite come. And I just think that those looks around were just enough that she potentially just caught some water. What I've heard is the conditions are pretty tricky. That the water's not that rough, but it's very, very windy, and the wind, as much as anything, is playing havoc. If you're going forward and you get a bit of a gust come through it, just sort of lifts your blade or whatever. Your blade's not quite where you want it, and we've seen a lot. I can't remember a regatta, watching the Norwegians fall in yesterday, the Dutch men's quad, the Italian men's quad, the German women's quad, Demir Martin today. There's been a lot of cases of people catching water, having poor strokes. I saw one in the actually New Zealand men's 8 yesterday. Sean Kirkham in the 7 seat had a sort of false stroke, but he managed to pick it up halfway through. So I can't remember a regatta, possibly Rio, where the Sinkovic's they lost a blade in the heat in Rio in those awful conditions. But I can't remember a regatta, in the business end where we've had so many close calls.
Let's go on to the lightweight men's double. Obviously, the much fancied Irish did manage to pull off the win that we all hoped that they were going to, but it wasn't quite as big a scrap at the end of the play that people thought it might have been.
Yeah, it was a great performance by the Irish, but hats off to the Germans. They were impressive today. I think they knew that the Irish were favoured, and they knew they had to try to do something special to beat them. And they really just took that race out, and knowing that they had to had to win, by leading it. And they probably didn't get as much as they would have liked on the Irish. I thought the Irish had a pretty strong start for them. They can quite
Yeah.
often lose a couple of seconds in that first 500, but they just stayed in touch, and then used that second half of the race course to come through. But I think it probably took them longer to come through than they would have expected. And I just have to take my hat off to the Germans again, because they were passed. I thought,
Yes.
okay, race over, and they had another crack at it. And they actually got back in front of the Irish with about probably 300-400 to go. And that was quite an effort when you've gone out that hard to be able to come back. And ultimately the Irish held their nerve. And this is a very, very good crew. They were the world champions in 2019. They've had a good year this year. I just make one comment. I don't know what they're doing with their handles, but
Oh, yes.
they seem to be they're making it hard for themselves. I'm wondering if they just change gear. I didn't actually look hard enough at the start. Maybe they hold their hands out at the end of there, and then they sort of go, okay, now we're going down a gear, and slide it along. But it's an interesting way to scull.
Paul O'Donovan, definitely, I've seen him do it before. I noticed him doing it earlier in the regatta, but I've not seen Fintan also doing the same. But yeah, I mean, sure, if you want to make it hard.
Sort of like that wide arm grip kind of exercise, but yeah, it seems to work for them. So don't knock it until you try it, I guess.
Exactly. Let's move on to the women's pairs race. This was another corker. Again, you kind of feel that the whole point about this regatta is sometimes just to make sure that the pundits have to eat their words. And Martin Cross has been particularly gracious, shall I say, a couple of times on his commentary when he's had to go, I've got that one wrong.
Yeah, well, I guess I have had a front row seat to the New Zealand women's pair this year. Embarrassingly, I guess from my perspective, they've been my training partner. But I think if you look at what they've done, like I am honestly, I've been blown away by the numbers that they are pumping out. And some of my training speeds were as good as I've ever done, and I just had to keep reminding myself that they were absolutely exceptional, because they would be sitting next to me. And it's they've completely rewritten the record books. I think yesterday in the semi, taking the world best time, they were cruising in that last 500.
Really?
And yeah, they were, and they did a 47. I honestly believe that if they actually had have had those conditions from yesterday, they probably would have done a 43, 44. That's what they're capable of. And so I guess I was not surprised. Probably what I was surprised about most is how close that race was. Because I really thought they'd dominate it more. But I guess that's the Olympic final. The Canadians again. Very, very brave race from them. I thought the Brits looked good. I think Helen is absolutely amazing to do what she's done. You got to think Polly last year as well was off working in the NHS and helping with the COVID response. So for them to pull out that sort of performance at Olympic Games, literally a few months after coming back, it's pretty incredible. and sure they just missed out on a medal, but that was one performance that is pretty astounding, and I think they can be very proud of it. I think to expect them to come and win that event, and I literally think it would be the fastest prognostically, in the right conditions.
Yeah.
With what the New Zealand women's pair have done this year. I think it's a credit to the Brits for that, but let's not forget the Russians. Really didn't really see them at all, and then suddenly they popped up in that last sort of 500. There was certainly for me there was a few nervous moments, and that was that was a bit of a hard watch. And Caroe and Grace, there's not a crew probably that deserves it more than them. They have been talented from the moment they started, and they've had a tough run. From the get go, they were very, very quick. Their first year, they were the fastest pair in New Zealand, and they were overlooked because they were considered too young. They went off and won the under-23 world champs. They were sort of given a carrot in Amsterdam to come to the world champs, and they jumped in a 4, never rode a 4 before, and they set the world best time at 6:14, and they still hold that world best time in the 4. So they're very, very talented combination. Again, 2016, potentially they should have been the pair, and again they were overlooked for Rebecca and Genevieve. Obviously, they went on to win a silver medal, so it wasn't.
Wasn't all bad.
Yeah, it was a very close call, but I think Caroe and Grace, probably if you looked at what they were capable of, and I think they've sort of started to show that capability over this 5-year cycle. So to see them win, it was awesome. Probably going the Martin Cross biased route, but it was awesome, and so proud of those girls to see them go out and execute like they did today.
I was really personally pleased that the Canadians managed their comeback, because they had a really good ding dong against the Kiwi girls at the Worlds 3 years ago. And it was great that they were in the race. And as a small bit of me that actually is quite sad the Australians didn't make it into the final, but according to Sarah Cook, who I spoke with yesterday, their prognostics were off the charts. So perhaps that's a future showdown. Who knows?
Yeah, well, I think after 2019 showdown, I expected the Australians to be the biggest competitors to them, and I think, to be honest, through this regatta, I think the Australians were the second best, or the form crew, and I think it just showed yesterday what doubling up, and obviously the Australians were affected by the change in schedule, but that's what can happen in racing, and I guess that's the jeopardy of doubling up, especially into two boats that when you've got your sort of big boat final before your semi-final. And I'm not sure whether the Aussies, to me, watching that semi-final, I thought they tried to get a little bit cute with it. Maybe they didn't sort of push. I'm not sure how much they had in reserve, but I think they were trying to save something. And then I think what happened is when the race came on in the end, then they really felt the legs. But had they maybe done a little bit more work early, got out in front, it could have been a different story. It could have been an easier race for them. And that's the jeopardy of Olympic semi-finals. And we've seen a few upsets today, which we'll talk about shortly in the singles.
Yeah, it is so challenging. And as a coach, what do you say to your crew? Because you can't see the future. You can only race the race that you've got right here, right now in front of you. And I think the blessing for them was that their final came first. They can say they got an Olympic gold medal. I totally get that they're very disappointed about, but they won the B final, and they can maybe race another day. I think they're reasonably young. their time may yet come.
Yeah, well, it'll be great to, obviously, from my perspective, as soon as I saw them miss out, I thought they were the likely challengers for the gold medal to Caroe and Grace. So I was quietly happy, but on the other hand, it would have been nice to see a real showdown, and I think you always want that as a rower. You want to beat the best, but obviously you got to get to the final, and that's the first step. And I think it's, for me, when I was racing, the semi-final was always what I was most nervous about. It was always the round that I enjoyed the least, because you got performances out of people that potentially you didn't expect. And I think you saw that, the women's pair. You saw yesterday the Greeks raced their final.
Yep, they totally
They
did.
set a world best time. They held it briefly until Caroe and Grace came down and bettered it, but where were they today? And that's semi-final racing, because as we said before, if you don't make it through in the semi, you don't get a chance to race for the gold. So I think you always get that in any event. You get the crews that have raced their sort of final in the semi, and they probably won't race again. And then you get those crews that have got through with a little bit of powder dry, and then they can bring it in the final. And that women's pair was a pretty exciting race in the end, with really four crews, again, going for it all the way down the course.
Yeah, you're right about those semi-finals. There were two Spanish crews, the men's and women's pairs, both who had awesome races to qualify. And then, today they weren't in the front of the boat race at all.
Yeah, but that's good on them. I say, because that's what it takes, and they're guaranteed a top 6 finish. By making it into the final, and that's what counts. And as I say, I think it is always harder for the favourites, because you are trying to get through that semi as easily as possible, but you don't want to leave yourself. And I know, you've also got to look at the semi. Sometimes you don't have necessarily the strongest semi, but you might have 4 people that could all make it. And those are almost the worst quite often, because there's going to be a battle behind, and you don't want to get caught up in that towards the end.
Let's go on to the men's pairs race. The Croatians pulled off their double in splendid style.
Yeah, I thought they were impressive today. They knew their race plan. They raced themselves. They weren't worried about anyone else out there. They just knew, if we perform at our best, we're going to win this race. And it's obviously it wasn't as exciting as maybe the women's lightweight women's double, but it's, as a rowing purist, you say, wow, that is a joy to watch. And it's a pretty impressive feat, coming from a double scull to come and then win a pair at the next Olympiad. And I must admit, when I first saw them in the pair, I had my doubts.
Oh yes,
they
were a bit lumpy, weren't they?
Yeah.
Those first couple of years. It was a bit like when Matthew Pinsent and James Cracknell, one of them had to change sides, and you looked at them and went, "There's a lot of power there."
I think like they, and obviously they probably did. They were very successful in the double, and they tried to row the pair like a double. Big, strong finishes, and it wasn't that nice. But they have learnt, they have adjusted, and I think what we saw today, they were an impressive pair. And I think the first people to win, both Olympic, European, and World Championship gold medals in 2 different events. So good on them. It's fantastic. We'll have to see what they switch to now. See what they're going to do. Don't forget they've also won a medal in the quad as well in 212. So yeah,
that's right. It's interesting that they had the stronger athlete in the bow seat. They clearly tried everything with that crew. But they've matured hugely over this Olympiad, and it's been a real joy as a fan to go along with them for the ride. I mean, they were good at posting videos of themselves on social and stuff, and you just felt that they wanted you to be in there watching them make the progress, because they knew they weren't going to, step straight into a gold medal slot without a lot of hard work.
Yeah, exactly, and it's a great to see, and just great to see athletes. I guess they obviously felt like they'd achieved everything they had in the double. There was nothing left to
More to
achieve,
win.
so they're like, okay, what's our next challenge, and let's try something else. And I guess it's a bit of a shame that potentially there wasn't any great pairs. There's been some great pairs over the years, and like it's a shame that we haven't had the crossovers. With obviously back with a Pinsent Redgrave, and then you had the Gin and
True. Yeah.
well the Tompkins, and then the Gin
Duncan
and
Free.
Free,
Free
and then
Gin. Free Gin, one of the
the
best
Free
named
Gin, yeah.
pairs of all time.
And then you had obviously Hamish and Eric, and Triggs Hodge and Reed sort of had a crack at that. But it's just a shame. I guess we've had all these great pairs over the years, but they haven't really overlapped, which is a bit of a shame. It would have been great to see some of these guys tussle it out and race each other.
Yeah. That would be a fantasy rowing league, wouldn't
it? Yeah.
Hats off, of course, to the Danes for cranking that third place out, and the Romanians. I love Romanian rowing. They're very kind of below the radar because a lot of them don't speak English, and we don't tend to sort of bump into them in the sort of media circuit. But they've produced some really, really competent, amazing crews who've pulled it out and sort of progressed through the regatta. At the heats level, I didn't have the Romanians on my pick list at all, and they've got a silver medal today.
Yeah, it was an impressive race, and again, just really they wanted it more than anyone else today. And I think I was pretty impressed with the Danes as well. To see them go out pretty hard and just have a fairly even pace throughout the race. And it's very hard. You've got the Croatians sort of dominating a race, and there's still 2 medals up for grabs. So you've got to have what's going to work for you. And I think the Danes came through final qualifying, so they're one of the crews that managed to hold it together, which is not easy. And we've seen the Romanian men's 8, for example. They were very good early in the season, and haven't been able to hold it together, and obviously missed out on the A final. But it was great to see, and I understand both those pairs come from American universities. So it's quite interesting.
In Denmark, yeah, and the Danish pair, I think that's right.
Yeah, I think the Danes, and I think they were saying the Romanians as well. But
I know that the Dutch apparently have entered Henley Royal, so we'll see them again in August.
Oh right. Yeah, no, that'll be great. But yeah, I think to see that is quite interesting in itself, because the American collegiate program is very 8s dominated, and you generally see those guys aren't great in small boats. But to see them out doing that in the pair is great for the sport. And we'll see, I guess, they're young guys, so what they can sort of mount over the next few years, and see how strong they can get.
Be good also for heavyweight rowing in Denmark. Let's face it, they have an incredible lightweight reputation, and they've now got heavies across the board, the women and the men.
Yeah, it's interesting, I guess, as an overall event, seeing some of these countries really develop, the Danes, thinking the Irish as well. You're starting to see some real depth coming through in a number of boats, which is really, really good to see.
Let's move on to talking about the semi-finals in the women's single sculls, and really the Irish is the story there. Sunita Pascuri not making the final. I thought she looked incredibly heavy in her quarterfinal, just like she was working it hard, but she didn't have what it took today. But I'm not sure. Did you feel she's performed well at all this season?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I saw her in Lucerne, and she sort of came through and sort of put it together, and I thought, okay, like that's a fairly solid result. Obviously, I think COVID affected. I think we're seeing, how people dealt with that, and it was a very weird season. A lot of these, like all the New Zealand crews, Aussie crews, we haven't seen any form at all.
No.
Obviously, we know from home, but you have no idea how they go, and how you're trying to guess how you sort of match up against the rest of the world. And so I thought, Sunita, she's short on racing, but what she did in Lucerne, I thought, okay, she's pretty well on track. But I have to agree with you. Watching her through the preliminary rounds here, I was like, I wasn't sure whether she was just short on racing, or potentially didn't quite have it. And unfortunately for her, she just got herself in a bad spot. She had a slow start, and never had the speed really to come back. And being a world champion and missing out like that is, it's heartbreaking. It's something that your dreams, and we saw it with the Irish double, and as well the men's double. So I'm not sure exactly what happened there. It's interesting. As I said, the Irish are certainly on the rise in those development crews, and then their sort of top crews seem to stumble a little bit. Sunita and the men's double. So I'm not sure whether that was something in the training or whatever. But it was a little bit of a hard watch. But in saying that, take your hat off to Grimellen. Just she was like, okay, this is my opportunity, and I'm going to go and take this race. And she went out with intent, and obviously the Russian came through her in the last part. But that was a very brave race. I guess the question mark is did she race her final today, or can she back it up again tomorrow, which will be interesting.
I think that there's definitely something to be said for the peaking program that the athletes are on. I certainly noticed the winning South African crews. The 4 went and won at the Lucerne qualifying regatta in fine form, and they really didn't show at all in this regatta. And you have to take a good look at the training plan, I think, particularly with someone like Sunita, who we know has race experience, and we don't know whether she's been injured or COVID affected health-wise, but someone like that who has form and then really doesn't perform, it's a tragedy. And it just might be that sort of a misjudgment that you can't analyze until after it's happened.
Yeah, for sure. I wouldn't. Yeah, certainly. I think COVID as well has had a massive impact. And I guess going into this, I expected some of the results, I guess, that we've seen. For people that were potentially favoured, that didn't quite reach the same heights, and some people that you never expected to do well, to come out of the woodwork and perform, really well, because, it's both a mental and a physical thing. And, like I know, Sunita's got a family, in Ireland. They live generally in smaller houses, for example. It's very hard to even find a space for an erg. I think she was, a lot of the time training up on the top of her apartment building. So that's tough. And then potentially not having the rowing, not having the it's very hard to motivate yourself. I know we only locked down in New Zealand for 5 weeks last year, and I got to about 3 or 4 days into lockdown. I lost all my motivation to train, and I honestly thought I was retiring. It was a very, very tough time for me, and I back myself as one of the toughest mental athletes in the world. And I was surprised and shocked, I guess, in that. But it really gave me that perspective. And I guess I battled through for 5 weeks until I got back on the water. And once I got back on the water, I was like, no, I want to have another go at this. But I get it. And if people weren't quite motivated, and and most people around the world got locked down for a lot longer than 5 weeks, 6 months, 8 months. And if you've lost that training in that time, that you're gonna pay for that now. And even at the time, you might not have thought so. Even some of those prelim races, you probably thought you were doing all right, and then you didn't. And I think another country that we have to look at here is the Dutch.
Oh,
Look
yeah.
at them back at the Europeans. The men's quad got beaten. The men's eight, they were nowhere. Even in Lucerne, they were pretty average. But they are a country on the rise. They're a country that got it right at the right time, and I think they have been arguably the most dominant crew at this regatta up until now. I'm hoping that New Zealand will reverse that tomorrow, but yeah, we'll see what happens.
Let's briefly touch on the men's single sculls. We've got a finals lineup that doesn't include Germany.
That was it was a surprise, I guess, with what you've seen this year. But on the flip side, there was always question marks about Ollie Zeidler and rough water, and it was a little bit choppy. We saw him not perform in Amsterdam. You saw him beaten the only time this year in Sabaudia, when it was just a little bit choppy. So that's something as a rower. I feel for him, because it's probably not even his fault. He's only a couple of years in the sport, and it takes time to get that confidence in rough water. But again, world champion. I think he would have gone in as most people's favourite here. He's had a very dominant season, winning, looking easy, and he's not going to have a chance to go for that gold medal.
Yeah, I do think it was possible that he was being conservative. You mentioned earlier about the Australian women's pair. I got the impression that he'd been instructed to qualify and not worry which lane he was heading for, and then got, as you said, completely caught out in the sprint for the line, and then didn't have the confidence or the skill to take it up in that stiff tailwind.
Yeah, and again, it's a semi-final at the Olympics. You don't take anything for granted, and people that you may never have thought could compete against you are suddenly right up there.
Crazy Greeks.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and, again, a very, very impressive performance. He just said, "I'm going to win this race," and he went out with intent, and he did. And again, I don't know. He's not someone I thought was going to be in the. Well, I thought he may just sneak into the A final. I didn't think he was going to be a semi-final winner. I guess tomorrow will tell whether he, has another gear. Or whether again he raced his final today. But either way, it was a very impressive performance. I think obviously Sverre Nielsen, I think he was keeping his powder dry a little bit today. He was doing it. He did it smart, but he just did enough to keep himself in that qualifying position. I'd expect a little bit more from him. I thought Kittel Bosch looked very strong in winning his heat, and I think Demir that's the best I've seen him race since 2016 when we had that battle. So it's great to see that. He caught a little crab, which put himself under pressure a little bit, but he recovered well from that. Had he not done that, I think he might have challenged a bit more. My only question about him is just again that build up he's had. He's had a lot of injuries. Does he have the fitness? The compression of the schedule and having two races within 2 days. I think that will take an effect on some people, and we'll obviously have to see. But I really hope he's my from my heart favourite. I'd love to see him win a gold medal after that race we had in 2016. But I think it's going to come down to a race between him, Schittel, and Sverre Nielsen, with possibly the Greek firing a shot or two, if he can back up today's performance.
Yeah, we'll see if Nasukos can pull it off. One thing I did notice that Damir Martin was struggling with was steering. He kept drifting over towards the stroke side of his lane. So I think if he can go straighter, he'll have more boat speed. But there were definite times when he was correcting, and so that's really interesting because no one else seems to be having that problem. So I don't know if it was as a result of his, clipping that buoy, catching his crab, but certainly I think there's more speed in him.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting actually because yeah, well, my personal experience is the Empacher boats really struggle in the side wind, and
Huh.
I've always struggled in an Empacher when there's a side wind because it just seems to it just seems to catch the wind a little bit more, or something gets pushed around a bit more. But I'm not sure because some of the other guys didn't seem to have the same sort of issues, but I just wonder if it's something, a fin choice or something like that maybe affects that.
Yeah, could easily be. Let's move on to looking at the eights. We've got the men's and the women's eights. Let's talk men first. I know it's the blue ribboned event. I know that New Zealand's put all of their reasonably big guns into a single crew. How's it feeling?
Yeah, no, it's exciting to see them perform. Young guys, and see that repechage was pretty impressive. I wasn't sure about the Brits. I think again we've got another sort of peaking issue, because they've been impressive all year, and I thought, after the heat, I thought maybe it's just a bad race, and obviously they gave it their all, in the rep, led out, but they couldn't hold on to it. So it's going to be interesting to see what they can do. Whether it is actually a peaking issue, but I think we've had again, you can look across the board. Obviously their men's quad performed very well, but the men's four, didn't quite live up to expectation, and a number of their crews have not quite reached the heights that you would expect. So yeah, I guess we'll see tomorrow, whether they can fire another shot. But it was very exciting watching New Zealand come through and just look strong, throughout the race. I think the big question mark there is, can they hold on in that first 500? If the Dutch or the Germans can get out to half a length, I think it's going to be hard to pull back. I kind of feel like the eight is really the Germans have opened the door. Obviously this was a boat class I raced in 2019, and I was incredibly impressed with the Germans, because they just seem to be able to find a way to win. Whether they were behind, whether they were in front, they just had this relentless speed that they just always got them out in front towards the end, and were very, very hard to catch. And I felt like they've sort of, again, whether it was COVID or whatever, they showed some vulnerability this year, and I think this race is certainly not a given to anyone. My money's still on the Germans, but the Dutch have definitely got an opportunity. I believe the Kiwis could win it, if they have an absolute stormer. And as I say, there's still a little question mark over the Brits, whether they can pull something out. The US as well showed some really good speed in that heat. Not sure they've got enough to last the distance. I think maybe the Aussies are probably the only crew, slightly off the pace, but this is gonna come down to 5 crews tomorrow, and who wants it the most.
I've got to ask you, do you have a theory as to why so many New Zealand crews are slow in the first 500, particularly off the start?
I think it's the training we do, really. Is we're a very high endurance program,
Yeah.
and like there's just not many crews, that have that fast start. And it probably actually something we didn't touch on was the other semi-final of a women's single, and Emma is almost the exception to the rule in New Zealand, that she's got a really rapid start, but that she's really the only one in history, that's really been able to consistently get out in front, for that first 500. But I think with that endurance program, it means that I think the eights in the rep, they were basically did 120, 120, 121, 120. So you got that base speed throughout the race. Whereas a lot of crews might do a sort of 118, 119, and then fade to a 120, 121 sort of thing. So yeah, that's I think that's really the training more than anything that we do in New Zealand.
Let's go on to the women's eights. Big hopes here from the New Zealand girls, but also let's not discount pretty much everybody else. USA, Romania, Canada. I mean, there's some amazing crews in this lineup.
Yeah, it's again, it's a case of who shows up, who wants it the most on the day, and I think, I really hope the New Zealanders are going to do it. They showed really good speed in that second K in the heat to win it, and thank Christ they did that, because that could have ended the hopes. It would have meant that yesterday Caroe and Grace had their pair semi-final in the women's 8 rep within 10 minutes. So it was a very, very important win that they got in that heat. So I certainly hope they can do it. But from what we saw, the US looked like they're strong. And the Canadians as well, showed some really good speed, and then the Romanians in the repechage, came out and set a world best time. So I think it's going to be very interesting. You've got potentially the Canadians and the US who sort of front load the race. They try to get a lead and hold on. And you've got New Zealand and Romania who they back end the race. So it's going to be a case of, can the US or Canadians get enough to hold on, or can the Romanians or the New Zealanders basically limit the damage and then use their strength in that second K to go through. So again, very exciting race, and certainly a tough one to pick.
Yeah, it's going to be a great end to this regatta. I've done a little tot up on the medal table. At the moment, overnight standings, Australia are leading. This is my scoring, so 2 golds and 2 bronzes. But you mentioned how good a regatta the Netherlands have had. They've got 5 medals, so they've got a gold, 2 silvers, and 2 bronzes. And then Romania has a gold, 2 silvers, and gold and 2 silvers. There are some really, really strong rowing nations that are up there, and it's important, I think, for the sport that the medals do get shared around, that countries like Denmark, like Poland, are still pulling in medals and not getting beaten up, down, and sideways all across the board.
Yeah, no, it's great to see, and obviously you've got the smaller countries, the Croatias and stuff that obviously with Demir to go tomorrow, but only a couple of crews, but potentially will do very well. So it's always great to have them. And yeah, it's been a very even regatta, very fascinating, I guess, to watch. As everyone's come together for the first time this year to race, and I think those 3 gold medals that New Zealand's going to win tomorrow should just top off the medal table with 4 golds and a silver.
Right, there's a crate of beer on that, Mahe.
Well, no, I'm not sure I'm prepared to bet on that, but that's my dream.
You can't just open your mouth and not expect to be challenged.
Yeah, well, I think there's 2 very good chances, and the men's 8 are an outside chance. So,
Mahe Drysdale, it's been a delight. Thank you so much for giving us your expert insights and wisdom. And I'm just so pleased that everybody actually is having a good Olympic regatta, that it has happened. I'm very sad that you're not there. I'm very sad that I'm not there watching. But overall, it is good that it's happening. And I think that rowing as a sport really is going from strength to strength.
Oh, it is fantastic to see them all out there racing, and as I say, the first time everyone's been together, which is great. It looks like, you know, Japan's put on an amazing Olympics. So just feel sad for them that you know, they've had to do it within COVID, and you know, they haven't been able to get out and be in the stands, and obviously have all those international visitors, because it would have been quite an amazing Olympics. But you know, thankfully it is happening, and yeah, after 20 years. I've you know, been watching it from the couch. It's a lot easier physically, but I think the angst and the nerves are still there, and I'll certainly be you know, those three big races tomorrow will be yeah, probably need a heart rate monitor on. It might be quite a tough day.
Yeah, and just for all of our overseas listeners, do check the times of the races. They are bringing them forward. Apparently, there's some weather due in, so do check your local times and set your alarm clocks tonight. So this has been me, Rebecca Caroe, from Rowingchat with our 2021 Olympic review. Many thanks to Mahe Drysdale, and we will be back tomorrow with another guest to review the final day of the Tokyo Olympic Regatta.